Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a look at the 2024 film Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. This is episode 429. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Neither the gatekeeper nor the keymaster, but possibly now the fire master.
Aha, yes. The introduction of superheroes, a topic that we had not even prepared, but is now getting added to my list. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Okay, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is a 2024 American supernatural comedy film directed by Gil Kenan from a screenplay he wrote with Jason Reitman. It's a sequel, and I can't imagine that you don't know this, but it is a sequel to Ghostbusters Afterlife, which came out in 2021, 3 years ago. It's the fifth film in the Ghostbusters franchise. The film stars Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon, Finn Wolfhard, McKenna Grace, Celeste O'Connor, Logan Kim. These are all recurring roles from Afterlife, alongside Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Annie Potts, William Atherton showing up, reprising their characters from earlier films. Kumail Nanjiani, Patton Oswalt, Emily Aylan Lind, and James Acaster also join the list. So in this one, the characters from the 2021 film have moved into the New York headquarters of the original Ghostbusters, and they get involved in a plot involving the return of a god who controls. He has cold powers basically, and seeks to build a spectral army. So this is going to be so fun. We have stuff to talk about. Let's get our opening thoughts and keep them brief because we got a lot to hit on. But I want to hear like your opening, like wham thoughts on Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Let's go, Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. I guess I'll just
Really?
go right into the topics. So, Julia, lay it on us.
Well, I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought the effects were amazing. The cast was awesome. Really, it was funny in parts. It was also really sweet and emotional in parts. So I just really enjoyed it. And I don't really read reviews. But I heard through the grapevine that not everybody has loved it, which is surprising to me because I thought it was great. So that's me.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. It's a good spin up. Tony, what's up?
Yeah, we saw it. Rain and I saw it, and we really enjoyed it. We liked different things and didn't like other things, so we actually had a pretty good conversation about it ourselves. I think your enjoyment of it may be colored by what you think of how they use nostalgia. If you're kind of open for like where it's going with. The original cast can't make Ghostbusters movies forever. So, kind of ramping up, maybe pass the torch, I think is not a bad idea. Some people may not like that, right? So I think there's a variety of reasons why you may or may not like it, but it has some really great action beats. I thought they just did a really good job on a lot of it. There's a lot of interesting bits. There's nods to the toys. There's nods to the original, real Ghostbusters cartoon. The cast that's here is great. I think it's a fun movie. I didn't know how it was going to be because I liked Afterlife, but can you keep that momentum going? Right. In moving it back to New York. So it has to be kind of in that vein. But yeah, I thought it was cool. I definitely would watch it again immediately.
Thank you, Tony. Drew, what about you?
First off, I have to say I am deeply hurt that you did not let me go first on a Ghostbusters movie.
But you get to go last.
Dare you?
Yeah, you get to just expand out.
Well, to be fair, it had been a while. Literally, had been a while since I'd gone first. Like usually, Jason will go, "Julia, it's been a while since you've gone first." And this time, it really had been a while since I'd gone.
I'm going to cry myself to sleep tonight. Yeah,
That'll be
so
your unfinished business.
yes.
Yes.
He's held to
When I
this
cut,
thing because
He's
he
gonna
didn't
haunt
get to go
Jason.
first.
here is your paranormal experience, Jason. It's forming right now. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, but as I have said with literally every other Ghostbusters movie I have ever reviewed for this show, I have never met a Ghostbusters movie that I didn't like. That being said, this is probably the weakest movie in the entire series. And I think that is largely due in part to the fact that this movie is stuffed to the brim with stuff. It's got
Mhm.
lots of characters, it's got a lot of ideas, it's got just a lot of set pieces, many of which are amazing actually when taken on an individual level.
Mm.
The consistent criticism that I have seen is that it is not as funny as it could have been, which I guess I do get, but I've always been more about the creatures and the gadgets when it comes
Mhm.
to Ghostbusters. So that didn't really that didn't really hit me. But so saying that it is my least favorite Ghostbusters movie, like I'm just getting that out of the way, that does not mean I did not enjoy it. Like it being the least of something that I really, really like
Yeah.
is, I can, this still means I can enjoy it a hell of a lot. So I do think if you're listening to this podcast and you're kind of deciding whether or not to see this in the theater, yeah, you should go see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will elaborate on all my other feelings, I guess, as we go through the many topics that we laid out.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, and also I think as the resident Ghostbusters expert yourself, Drew, I think there's room for you to be the one who could go. Well, actually, this one's my least favorite, or this is my most, and have it be. I mean, I'm surprised that you consider this one the weakest one, but I think that you're probably the strongest Ghostbusters feeler outer of all of us. So I think that's okay. All right, let us get into it. Um, what I want to say right up. By the way, we're not going to work our way through the plot because that would take us way too long, and it wouldn't let us get to where we want to go. I'm going to assume that people will kind of cover the plot, but mainly we're going to hit on themes and there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about. So first of all, I am not as aware of the Ghostbusters universe or multi-universe or multiverse or whatever it is, but this movie really makes you aware that there's a bigger Ghostbusters world. It like and what you called too many characters, I just call a lot of characters. You immediately kind of, it turns out that Ernie Hudson has been like funding a giant sort of BPRD style Ghostbusters universe, and there's warehouses and installations and all of this stuff. Like, in other words, in this film, all of a sudden Ghostbusters is big. I mean, or am I right? Has it been like this since the real Ghostbusters? Is that
um,
something that's been around?
well, this movie owes a lot to the real Ghostbusters in style, but the
Yeah.
idea that Winston is this multimillionaire is unique to the last few
Mhm.
movies. I think the idea that that there's two wings of the Ghostbusters makes sense. That you have a field team that actually goes out and fights ghosts and monsters and whatnot,
Yeah.
and you have like basically a tech support and research group. Like that
Yeah.
that actually makes a hell of a lot of logical sense because like not everybody, first of all, not everybody's going to want to strap on a nuclear accelerator and go shoot a giant blob in its face, like so,
Yeah.
but also like there would have to be people that would want to design the equipment and improve the equipment. Like it
Yes.
really like I think that was such a neat addition.
Yeah.
And it also, I gave Winston more, one of the criticisms of a lot of the other films is that Winston's never given enough to do. This actually gives him the most agency out of
Yes.
every single film.
Yeah, all of
And
a
he gets to
sudden
be the
Winston is
voice.
now M.
Yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
he gets to be the voice of reason in parts too, where he's like, "Look, this is how the world is now." Like he's the one
Yeah.
who's kind of grasped. Here's the world we live in. This is what we need to do to keep things going. He's multimillionaire, possibly establishing Ghostbusters all over the world as far as like how it looks and as far as
Yeah.
the way his company is. That's great. Ernie Hudson finally getting his due is awesome.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And can we
And
also say Ernie Hudson, Silver Fox? He has aged so well.
Yeah, man,
that's
he is
true.
Goddamn.
Who's
like
still
people were
doing it?
posting a lot
Same age.
today,
Him
and
and Paul Rudd don't age.
yeah,
Right.
wow. We can all hope that we look as cool and are as awesome as Ernie Hudson when we're
Seriously.
older.
Some
Though.
of us cannot hope that. I just want to point out that I do not bear that hope. That is not a thing that I'm basically setting myself for. I'm ready for the disappointment of.
Well, be like Dan Aykroyd, and you can be cool in other ways, like by being
Precisa
really
Mundo. Yes.
really
Yeah.
weird.
Well,
Yes.
Sigourney Weaver's not in this movie, but I've always would hoped to look to age the way Sigourney Weaver ages.
Mm. So yeah, I love this idea of the bigger, badder Ghostbusters world, and that actually. Well, so first of all, the street team in this universe, as Tony mentions, in theory there could be others out there that we're not aware of. So it is getting more James Bondy in that sense. But the street team that's happening in New York is a kind of an Incredibles family. That's where I can
Right.
imagine if you weren't on board for this, how you could suddenly be squirming in your seat, like I'm not comfortable with this. It's not what I wanted, because instead of four guys who got kicked out of a university and they're hunting ghosts, now it's a family hunting ghosts together and cracking wise and having their domestic
Which is
difficulties.
I'm thinking this as I'm saying it. It's interesting that they have their own little side gig, given that there is this huge Ernie Hudson corporation. Like, it's almost like he just lets them continue to exist because they're representing the
Well,
founders, but they're not really part of his thing.
yeah, but
Mm.
their family. I mean,
That's my point.
we talk about his family is
Yeah, I'm saying he lets
they're literally
them exist.
family of the founders. I think
Yeah,
they're literally grandfathered in, right?
Yes.
exactly.
In this movie, this is the movie where that unit gets introduced to the larger Ghostbusters world that has been worked on. And I got strains of science fiction movies here, like what's the one with Matthew McConaughey where he has to go across the universe by bending
No, not Contact. Damn.
Metro Interplanetary? No. I can't remember. It
Interstellar,
doesn't matter. Anyway,
Interstellar.
in that
Yeah,
one,
Interstellar.
Interstellar. Yeah.
Interstellar. In that
Mhm.
one, there's a whole thing where they're suddenly like, "Oh, didn't you know?" And then you walk through doors, and there's all of this activity going on that our hero was unaware of, and it sort of geometrically expands the world in front of them. And that's what happens here. Is we get the impression at first that they are a makeshift world, and they think they are, and then it
Well,
turns
they
out,
seem vaguely aware of it. They just they know that there is a lab. They just didn't realize
right.
how put
Well,
together it was.
And
yeah, and
the
they didn't
movie
know there
plays a
was a
little loose
giant.
with this, by the way.
They didn't know there was a giant ghost trap because they were gonna need a
Right?
bigger trap. It's like, oh, there is a giant one.
Right.
I love first of all, incoming Fantastic Four movie, take notes. But
Mhm.
I love the opening sequence of this, family unit slash I actually felt like that scene with them chasing the sewer dragon, that felt the most in line with what I think people would think ghosts I mean, I don't know what people want from a Ghostbusters movie. I know what I want, but I don't necessarily know what everybody else wants. But that felt very in tune with the scene in the original movie where the original guys are in the hotel room and they're destroying this hotel ballroom while trying to catch Slimer. This felt like that. It also felt like blue collar the way
Yeah.
that stuff does. So Like, yes, it's
I'm
not
sorry, that just makes me laugh to even think of that in Ivan Reitman's original when, Egon is just like slamming the entire room and Venkman's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa." That's so wonderful. Yeah.
classic for a reason.
A good film.
But you know, this stuff right here, I find myself very invested in the
Mm.
Spangler family after watching that opening sequence. Although I feel like once we're done talking about that, I would like to backtrack to maybe what my favorite scene in the entire movie is, oddly enough.
Okay, I'm gonna write down favorite scene, but I want to stay on this thing of family because I want to dovetail a little bit in here, and we can loop back if we miss a point. But this theme of family, I think, is like the most coherent theme in the entire film. The theme
Yeah,
of blood
because
family and
it's
also found family
right, because there's so
being
many levels.
important. Yeah, the fact that they are Spengler connected by blood is meaningful to this film, and yet this film also is profoundly serious about your family is who you invite into your lives, which I
Hmm.
find really wonderful. It's neat. Yeah, Julia,
Yeah,
you were
because you
gonna
have
say
well,
something.
right, because you have the generations of Ghostbusters family, like, there's just because the Ghostbusters family is the original Ghostbusters, the Spengler descendant, and then extended family, the Ghostbusters community, like, not just the corporation, but the fandom, really. And then, of course, you've got, the relationships that they formed, like, Paul Rudd, who is I don't know that they're necessarily married because he always
They're
seems to
not.
be
They appear to
uncomfortable
not
saying
yet be
yeah,
married.
right, so he's not really
Yeah.
technically the stepfather, which is why he calls himself her step teacher, which I thought was really funny. Um, but, there's, like, and then there's the relationship with the ghost, which is kind of a branch of that where the daughter, McKenna Grace's character, is choosing, to kind of bring in this ghost into the family. She allows her into the home. She's, just she's going to have kind of a relationship with her to the extent that she can. So there's all these different kind of branches, literally, like family tree
Mm,
branches, to this Ghostbusters family, I think.
Well, and I
yeah.
think that maybe played out a little stronger in Afterlife, but was smart to kind of carry it through in this movie, because I think that plays to the appeal of part of the appeal of Ghostbusters. And I think this is why it is one of the most cosplayed things ever. Like, if you ever
Mm,
go to any kind of convention, there are
mm,
always Ghostbusters. And I think a big reason why that is literally anybody can be a Ghostbuster. Like, it's this idea that you don't have to be Chris Hemsworth or Scarlett Johansson, like this perfect
mm.
physical specimen, to be a hero. Like, anybody can strap on a proton pack, anybody can put on a flight suit, and they can go be a Ghostbuster.
Now, great,
And
Chris Hemsworth does get to be a Ghostbuster.
that is true.
That
That
is
that might not have been the best example. But my point still stands. Like, I think this idea of both family, both found and related, I think really taps into that aspect of Ghostbusters fandom.
Mm. It's wonderful. It makes you feel good watching it. Oh,
So what you're
how
saying
nice.
is busting makes you feel good?
But I can see if you were a cynical. Oh, that's a dark thing. I was going to say a cynical person, but it's not necessarily true. You could just think that's too cheesy for you to get to be along for the ride for. But I found myself responding really positively to it. I love found family themes over and over again. I'm always interested in that, and it's neat. It's neat to see that here. I'm not sure, and I can see being on like why exactly are Paul Rudd and Spangler's daughter not even talking about marriage? Maybe that's because they're a new kind of family and they're not going to get married. Maybe they're,
That
who knows?
does happen a lot these days. I mean, I
Yeah,
think that could just be an acknowledgement of the
I think
modern
that's right.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, she gives him permission, like, verbally gives him permission to play a father role in the kids' lives. So, to that extent, she has said you are part of the family, but they're just not going to do any kind of legal thing, I guess, as far as we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
well,
it's
sorry,
I,
Tony, you go first.
I think it's also the nature of how everything is. Like when they talk and when they interact, they've moved. Everything is the one thing that's solid is the unit they have.
Mhm.
But like everything else is like, hey, we're now Ghostbusters, and like there's been no time for a marriage, even if it
That's true.
wasn't more modern, like you're talking about. And they keep kind of coming back to when do we have these talks? When do we hash this out? Like I got the impression that it was just like, who has time to, like, we got a
Right.
good thing going, but who has
Yeah.
time to do that? Because now we're also Ghostbusters in New York.
Yeah, and it's busy
And
because New
and
York is a super
they're trying to
haunted
feel
place.
it out.
Yeah.
And I think that tension of trying to feel that out is kind of what makes this interesting. It's not this like pat. If it was perhaps a more Disney movie from early Disney eras, it would be like, oh yeah, well, we were in New York. Did you get the invitations done for the wedding? Like that would be the
Yes, you're
plot.
right.
But here we
Like
have,
if you're talking about Fantastic Four 2, actually,
or
has exactly that. Yeah.
oh, I don't even know if I've seen Fantastic Four 2. But either way, like I always got the impression that everything's so kind of tumultuous that nobody's had time. And when they do have time, you just don't want to be busting ghosts. You want to hang out and chill. And do
Yeah.
domestic stuff. And also now they have this like, decrepit firehouse they have to attend to as well.
Yes.
So
I just want to take a moment and appreciate Carrie Ann Coons for how awesome she is in both this movie and Afterlife, because I feel like because she
Agreed.
is not
She
the
plays Callie,
flashiest.
the mom.
Yeah, she is not the flashiest character in any of these movies. She's not like an eccentric character like
Yeah.
all the basically every other character in this universe, but she's really good at grounding what is going on in reality. Like she kind of functions a lot of the way Ernie Hudson does in the first two movies, whereas like if she believes what is going on, you are going to believe it. And
Well
I
said.
think that
Yeah.
is unappreciated but awesome. Like, and she does so well with like she's got great chemistry with Rudd, but like she basically has to play his straight man. But that's also underappreciated because she, by being there and having him, being able to react off of him, she makes him funnier.
That's right.
And I don't know. I just think she's great. Again, and having just rewatched Afterlife, I just like I am in awe and how good.
I'm
she
glad
is
you
in both
thought
of
about
these
that
movies.
because you're exactly right. There's so many like eye-popping characters here or people who are fascinating in watching there. And she doesn't really have an arc. Her whole purpose is to be a cornerstone and not an arc. She is just going to be there and
Thank
She's
God
an
for that because there's
anchor.
not room for any more arcs.
right.
That is true. That is true.
That's so true. That one of the best moments is her relationship with McKenna as Phoebe, McKenna Grace as Phoebe. Finn Wolfhard, by the way, is also here as Phoebe's brother Trevor, and that is luckily something
Poor
the
Finn.
script leans into because he is a lovable guy, not particularly yet defined in what he's going to do with his life, whereas McKenna Grace is a genius. So much so that they rely on her and they trust her to make her own decisions and all this stuff. But it makes her sort of this. She has her own gravity, and the place where the only, but she's still a kid, and so the only time that like she lashes out at her mom real harshly at one point, and it's
Well,
great.
and she
I
makes,
really,
I mean,
yeah.
she makes the worst mistake in the whole film. She's definitely a kid because like her judgment is very, very. Although
Yes.
there's plenty of adults who make stupid ass decisions too, but she makes a
Yeah.
very, very poor decision that causes all hell to break loose, kind of literally.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. But I didn't even see. Didn't begrudge her that because she just wanted to make out with her girlfriend, whereas
well,
telling her
but
mom if
Which she didn't get to do, poor thing.
But there's a lot
right.
to that because as we saw in the previous movie, she's kind of closed off. So the first, like, we do get some really interesting stuff because we get to see somebody who's used to like being an outcast,
hmm
not being good at emotional stuff. And finally now she's like, whoa, this is what this feels like. This is like, what is this? And so those decisions are, I mean, they're teenage decisions,
Yes.
especially awkward teenage decisions. And I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
Like that's, what do I do now? Oh, well, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna do what I need to do to finally I've got this thing, and I'm gonna need to do everything towards that. You don't
Yes.
think about those things because you're a teenager and you shouldn't be expected, which is
Yeah.
again why we need a grounded mom there to go, whoa, 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 like,
Yes.
you don't believe me
Well,
now,
and
but trust
Phoebe,
me. And I thought
yeah.
I thought that stuff, even though you're as a viewer, you're like, no, this is gonna be bad. If been or known an awkward teenager, you kind of get why that happens. It just doesn't just come out of the blue.
Well, and
I thought that part was well written.
she feels very the again, having just rewatched Afterlife, her progression as a character and the performance of McKenna Grace, which again, big up, she is a great little actress. She feels very much like the writing of this part of the movie is extraordinarily strong. Like she feels like a perfectly good aged up version of the character from the previous movie. Like the idea of her being sort of queer coded actually makes a lot of damn sense. It just, I don't know, everything about like the Phoebe stuff in this movie, and even her kind of being the one with the adversarial relationship with Walter Peck in this movie, like all of that just worked for me. Like
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I
And-
wish the rest of the movie had been more of that. Honest, her relationship with Ray also,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. I like it too because you can see the trap is, so you have the adults, and as parents, I'm sure you understand, Jason, Julie, like you have a really bright person who
Yeah.
wants to think they're adult because oftentimes they're the smartest person in the room, and I can
Right.
handle this, and I know the Ghostbusters, like I know how to do all of this, but still is a teenager. So
No,
Yeah.
our
parents have to
kids.
go like, look, okay, sure, but you realize that you don't know everything, and that's her.
Yeah,
Like
our
that's
kids are
that's great.
both legitimately a lot smarter than we are, but they are, yeah, they don't have the experience. So yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Every once in a while, you'd be like, wait, you're really smart, but that's just wrong what you just said.
Well,
yeah.
my favorite was when one of our kids, and I'm not going to say which one, I got a call because they were in deep trouble because they were circulating a petition to get their chemistry teacher fired because they didn't think that he was doing a very good job. And I was like, if you're gonna do this shit, you gotta warn me in advance.
Right. Right.
Like,
So we can talk through why this
Yeah.
might not be the
how this is
best
gonna go
idea.
down. Because
And the idea is you aren't here at this school, and
right.
you're old, so you don't know the same school stuff that I do. Even though, like, and legit, it sucks that as humans we have to learn these things the hard way.
Yeah.
Like you have to, because you cannot, when you're in that
Yeah.
a situation like that, you cannot understand that maybe your parents like they're just going to be negative, like, and there might be a reason for that, right? Because you can't, like, that's not where
Yeah.
you're at that point.
Right.
So
Oh my god.
like, yeah, you like, because what would that have been like? You would have said no, right? Like,
Well, we wouldn't have
obviously,
said you're not allowed. We would have
of
said, okay,
course,
let's explain why this. Let's look at the
right.
pros and cons of this situation.
Because the parents are just gonna tell her to not go in the ghost machine, right?
Yes. That's right.
So like that,
Parents are
but
wait. Let's not just dismiss that. The parents are going to tell her, "Do not separate your soul from your body,
right,
child."
Right.
That is not going to go how you think it's going to go.
It
Good
is
Right, of
funny,
Lord.
by the
course.
way, that doesn't pay off very much.
No,
Like
I thought
well,
I really that is one of the things where I was. I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm disappointed because I did want McKenna Grace's character to continue to be. What'd you say her name is? It's
Phoebe.
Phoebe, yes. I wanted her to continue to be Phoebe, but I really thought that she for a while was going to be possessed. You know what I mean? Like that McKenna Grace was going to be possessed by this creature, and instead it's like no, it's just kind of this weird
I am kind of glad we didn't do that because
portal.
losing Hawkeye through most of the Avengers because he's possessed is one of the most annoying.
Exactly.
things
I'm not
about
saying it
that.
was the right. Yeah, I think this was the right decision, but I was surprised that that's not how it went down.
Right. But
Especially because she starts mouthing the incantation, so I thought, oh shit, we're gonna see McKenna Grace be this god.
Yeah, and I know we jumped ahead, but I'm with Drew. Like I think sounds like we're all in agreement. That part felt,
her whole storyline.
It's
Do you think they bring
it,
up-
like
you
it's
know, the
almost like
other-
Ghostbusters Judy Blume kind of experience in some ways.
Here's the other thing: the fact that and look, I know in some ways this is rote territory for young adult supernatural stuff because I mean I've seen so many people go, oh, why did they
course.
have to rip off Buffy?
Oh,
It's
yeah,
Buffy, it's Buffy and Angel, it's Buffy and Angel. And I get that, but I think there is another layer working here in the context of the way it's framed in this movie, is that it almost feels like two kids from different like if you had like a
Romeo
kid
and Juliet.
well, no, not even just Romeo
Oh.
and Juliet. Like if somebody two people from like different cultural backgrounds, like if somebody was like their family was very strict Catholic and the other's family was very like Orthodox Jewish or something, like that there's this like tension that is there in this relationship, and like every time like she aims the proton gun at her like that I don't know, like I do get the criticism, I do, and I'm not saying it's entirely without merit, but the way like I don't just look at something that is a well-worn trope, because like it's impossible to avoid tropes in writing.
Right.
It really is, like no matter how hard you try. So I look at how it's executed, and I think everything that they executed, like everything that they were going for, was more or less pulled off. So like I can't completely knock that, even though like everybody's like, oh, it's the Buffy and Angel thing, roll your eyes. But like, first of all, that trope is a lot older than Buffy and Angel, but
right.
Like it worked for me here. And there's a lot of stuff that did not work for me in this movie. But this relationship between her and Melody, the ghost, like that stuff all clicked with me. There's the other side of this, which like, of course there's the people that are complaining that there is a seemingly gay romance in a Ghostbusters movie, but those are the same people that probably had their tidy whities in a bunch about there being lady Ghostbusters in 2016, and I'm like, fuck those people.
Are people really Tony, I want to get to you, but are people really bitching that this is too gay?
Yes.
Considering this is the most chaste gay relationship I've ever seen.
And it's so tame.
They are prevented from touching one another physically by universes, so that people are not, so their eyes are not.
And then by plot once she.
Yeah, right. And probably by, if we're thinking about outside of universes stuff, probably by the Chinese government, because they want this movie to play there, and they don't allow homosexual kisses on screen in China.
How do they get around it being a supernatural movie? Because that's always been, I guess things have changed, because that's a big thing.
Because I know the 2016 Ghostbusters did not go there because like something you can't have ghosts in a movie.
But that's why so many ghost movies were period pieces. Was the kind of loophole.
I'm wondering when they send it over there, if maybe they call them monsters instead of ghosts, because Afterlife did go to China, and I'm curious how they bypass that.
Money sometimes will.
I have no. This sounds like something to do some extra credit on, because I know nothing about this. This is a
wow, Jason. Yeah, if you look like we could do a whole. I could do a whole half episode on getting like all the co-production stuff, what we're doing to get things to China. It's it's fascinating and kind of terrible, but also interesting. It's a whole if you research it, there's a huge rabbit hole there.
Well, but the bottom line is, Jason, yes, there are actually people
Yeah.
calling this woke busters
Oh my
on
God.
on
That
social media.
you want to talk about tiresome. I mean, people complaining about Buffy and Angel, but this woke thing is the most boring. I just look. Do you respond to the story or not? Did it work for you or not? You know, nothing else matters. That's just my
Jason,
personal
what if your kid is somehow seduced by a gay ghost though?
I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
that could happen. Like you just one step
Both-
away, man.
yeah.
You just like you see
she's got
this girl she's a smart girl. She used to be from a small town, and now she moves to New York, and now look, she's gay.
I mean, I guess that's what happens when you go to college.
All the crime.
When you become a
and the blah, 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 you
Ghostbuster.
become a Ghostbuster, Jason. Just look, see the slippery slope.
Isn't it funny, by the way? We wanted to mention that this is a much more chaste film. I mean, Ray got a blowjob from a ghost in the first movie.
Yes.
And there's nothing.
Does Carrie Ann Coons and Paul Rudd even kiss in this movie?
I don't
No.
even know if we see a bedroom for them. And
Yeah,
they do not.
like,
kiss.
This is a bedroom, but they don't kiss.
This is
They're
a
just-
very
She's packing. She's packing her clothes.
This is a very, very chaste movie when you consider that most of the other movies have pretty raunchy jokes in it. And this movie scales that way back, with the exception of a pretty hilarious joke about a sex dungeon.
Yes.
But
All of that was
is
cool.
really it. Yeah.
And
that's
that was all
perfectly in
Gen Z
line with
stuff.
that's perfectly in line with every other movie in this franchise. But I think, they probably really wanted to lean more towards the family audience, which, more power to them. But it's like I often say, the original Ghostbusters is not a kids movie. It's just a movie you happened to watch when you were a kid.
Absolutely. By the way, a couple things on the Melody character. One thing that we get is Rain pointed this out. Like, this is the first time I think we really see, or in any significant fashion, we see a ghost who doesn't turn into a monster of some sort, or is a monster of some sort.
Yep.
Which is fascinating in itself. Like, that opens up a whole new, like, whoa, what if we are ghost busting like non-monster ghosts?
Yeah,
and
trapping
Well,
them
I mean, you did have Egon in Afterlife.
Yeah, but
That's
not.
true.
Yeah, but he doesn't talk. He doesn't talk.
That
This
is
the
true.
first
He
time
doesn't speak.
this is the first time that a person ghost talks. That's not.
Has
that's
agency beyond being a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although
I've always kind of been of the opinion that in the universe of Ghostbusters, you have ghosts, which are people who died and have stuck around because, like they say in the movie, you have unfinished business. But then also you have like spirits, which like I would say Gozer definitely qualifies as, like, is something that was never human to begin with.
Or like demons, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the Slimer really seemed like he used to be a person.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. No, you're right.
I love that they brought Slimer back and that they brought the library ghost back. That just made me happy.
Yes.
But they also brought back this new innovation from the last movie, which is these little Stay Puft guys, which is never get old. They're super fun.
Although I want to say, missed opportunity. I have ever since they introduced those things, I've been wanting them to like slam together and turn into a gigantic marshmallow man.
That's a really good point.
Well,
yeah.
You could still get that. I go back and forth. Rain thought they were great. I like them, but also they are kind of like the new Minions in a way. But they are really funny. They do a lot of really good sight gags. By the way, the other thing I was going to say is I do find it interesting also that even though she's being led along, and we kind of jump around in the story here, there's a super betrayal that happens that isn't acknowledged as much, because her whole introduction where they're playing chess, where they first meet, she's definitely taken advantage of Phoebe's grandfather, the relationship with her grandfather, like that. Her whole plan of that is
because
I think that she's being told because she's being manipulated.
Yeah, but I don't feel like I don't feel like I mean, at least I don't think she knew. Maybe she was being manipulated, but I don't think she knew about the grandfather because she's like, "Wait, you're not freaked out that that I'm here." Like she
Yeah,
didn't.
but that's what I found interesting. We don't know is how reliable she is because
Mm.
she's
Unreliable
being
narrator.
manipulated by the big bad there,
Yeah.
Like, hey, go make friends. Like, we need this person.
But it
And
almost
so
seems
like,
like, well, okay, you're right. I mean, because what she does say, does it have to be her? But I guess it could be that she was told it's going to be her and then grows attached to her
yeah,
after.
that's how I read it. But what's great is you can read that however you want, right?
Yeah.
Like that's good storytelling. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it could be that she met up and then was like, oh wait, here's my chance. Or it could be, hey, I need this girl and I need you to be there at the right time. Go play chess because that's a thing that'll connect you. But if that's the
Yeah.
case, then that's a pretty evil betrayal thing. Now she's being manipulated, so it's not like she's the big, part of the big bad as we see. But I
No, she's
thought
more
that
like a
was
gun
like,
wall. She's like a character in a James Bond. Please forgive me for mentioning James Bond many times, but that's a world where the universe got bigger. But
sure,
she's like a gun wall who develops feelings for the hero. That was
right,
my read on it. She's
yeah,
working for whatever this creature is called.
Garutka.
And
yeah.
okay, I keep wanting to say Gozer. I know, and I'm sorry. And she's working for the big bad, but she has her own emotions, and so she
She's
would,
also
yeah,
really awesome. Look, like again, in a movie that is pumped to the gills with really impressive special effects. Like I loved like her look with like because she's
Flame.
somebody that died in a fire. That she's got
yes,
this like
Yeah.
layer of flame that's on her,
It's
pretty
and
great.
beautiful. No, that's something. It was gorgeous. The flames are gorgeous. The color of her color is gorgeous. I love all of the ice effects, and I thought it was really cool that. And again, I know we're jumping all over the place. I love that the thing that manages to kind of defeat the big bad ends up being, and you kind of know this is coming. When she's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I really just need to cross over so I can see my family," and then you're like, "I know she's going to come back and save everybody because this is just how these stories go." And she saves them by introducing real flame. Like she's not like she's got the ghost flames, but she introduces a real flame into the ice flame, the ice fire battle that Kumail
Yeah.
Nanjiani is going to get sucked into. So we'll come back to that later, but I just think that's really cool that she
Hmm.
brings a real life, physical fire into this world, even though she's ghostly. I just thought that was neat.
While I do want. Let's talk for a bit about, if you don't mind, about Kumail Nanjiani also expanding the universe perpendicularly, because all of a sudden we have just introduced superheroes into this universe. That is
Right.
really wild.
Funny
Like
because
like
he's kind of the similar character in the Eternals.
I'll
So
take your word. I
Hmm.
saw the Eternals, but it left my mind the moment I left the theater. And I mean no
yeah,
disrespect to Kumail Nanjiani, but but you know, this is like a big swing to suddenly go, oh, you know what else there is in the Ghostbusters universe? Uh, Basically, Knights Templar, and they have fire powers. FYI.
I,
well, I mean, I
you know,
think they were doing that so they could effectively have like magic Ghostbusters. Like
Hmm.
yeah,
they draw the comparison that they were like the Ghostbusters of
Yeah.
their era. But he also is a very sort of Peter Venkman type personality.
Mm.
In
well,
that he, huh?
I was gonna say I love that I was watching Bill Murray talking about the people in the cast, and he goes when they mentioned Kumail Nanjiani, he's like, he's so funny, and I was thinking, how cool would it be to be Kumail and hear Bill Murray thinks that you're really funny, and
yeah,
it's like
Well,
this
the
must be
biggest
such a
laugh
great thing.
that the crowd that I saw it with was Bill Murray throwing pencils at his head to get him angry.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I mean, that's definitely back. Like as far as character moments, that's definitely back to the original intent of him being this like
Yeah.
irreverent jerk.
yeah.
Yes.
Also, I think I think you said something to this, but I felt like in a lot of ways this feels a lot like the through line back to real Ghostbusters cartoon, because having a superhero in there, having magic, having all the stuff would feel very much in line with how that went. I was just old enough that I didn't watch a lot of episodes, but then
I
when I
didn't
caught
watch it
back
at
up
all,
with
so I
it,
know
I was
nothing.
like, oh man,
I
this
was
is really good.
obsessed with the real Ghostbusters.
I mean, they had a lot of great writing talent in that show. And after people were like, no, man, you need to give it a chance. Like this, and this. And I went back and was like, oh yeah, that was creepy as hell. That was great.
The idea though that there is magical stuff and supernatural stuff in this universe that exists prior to the original film only makes sense because it's not
Right.
like, you know, like Gozer is in the original movie is this ancient entity. There is this entire universe that was already unfolding before the original Ghostbusters even starts.
I mean, the
if
second
you
one has a
look
guy
at the
trapped in a
lore.
painting, right?
Yeah.
So-
So, like, you know, it does make sense. That being said, and you know, this is nothing against, you know, him as an actor. He is one of the characters that I feel like that you could have trimmed out of this movie and it wouldn't have been that different.
That's
Like
true. That's true. Yeah.
like honestly, like him and you know, look, I think their individual bits are fine, but like him, Patton Oswald, like the tech support Ghostbuster that was styled to look like Egon from the cartoon, like all those characters, you probably could have done their same beats with characters that already existed in the, like you could have given more screen time to the kids from the last movie.
Do you think the
Like,
British guy is made to look like Egon from the cartoon on purpose?
I definitely think that. There is no doubt in my mind. Like his hair, the coloring on his suit, like that is intentional. Egon was even blonde on the cartoon.
No, I remember it. Yeah. Sure.
Like
Julia, have you heard that in your takedowns? That
just in the
that,
in the IMDb they said they said the same thing. So
okay, I guess that makes sense.
Like that, I would be
they're
stunned.
not takedowns, they're breakdowns, Jason.
Breakdowns. I'm sorry.
Takedown implies
people out
that
there taking down the movie.
All right, I'm so sorry.
It's not Cinema Sins. But the, you know, like that is one of the things that I did find extraordinarily frustrating about this movie is that there are already a lot of characters that I am emotionally invested in this universe, including the kids from the last movie, who I think are all great. And I feel like because this like movie is like halfway through and they're still introducing new concepts and new characters. And in some ways that's cool because they're doing a lot of interesting world building, but at the same time, like I feel like you're kind of losing track of the characters that your audience already cares about. Like
this is a really complicated question, Drew, because sometimes I totally agree with that. Like I think about some of the least strong Star Trek movies where they're trying to figure out ways to shoehorn in all the characters and give each character a moment. And I feel like this movie does have a million characters, but I'm enjoying it all the way through. In other words, to the extent that there's a lot going on, I'm not bored and I'm not like appalled, I just
wish like for example, like the character Podcast, like I love the friendship that Phoebe has with him. He does not have nearly enough to do in this movie. And like
True.
you know, Finn Wolfhard's girlfriend, who is an intern with Winston now, like she's
Finn
just
Wolfhard
sort of there.
doesn't have enough to do.
Yeah, but at least he gets to interact with Slimer.
Yeah.
You know, like that's something, you know, like, and I just feel like some of this stuff you maybe could have, like Patton Oswalt's character, like I feel like you could have had, honestly, you could have had Ray give all that same exposition.
You absolutely could. Yes.
And I love Patton Oswalt. And I love the fact that they go back to the library. And I love that the library ghost is still there. But I want more screen time to the characters that I already love.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't know what to say about this because I guess I agree with you, but I sometimes I like the weird gonzo notion of let's just since we can't do like 13 episodes, let's instead just sort of stuff every corner with more stuff.
Well, this is why I said on my social media post about the movie there are like as taken as individual bits, all of this stuff is really cool. Like
Yeah.
it's not like the lore with Garuka and the Fire Masters and all that stuff. It is really cool, but because you have to introduce this new character,
Yeah.
I'm not getting as much time with Peter Venkman. I'm not getting as much time with Paul Rudd. I'm not getting, these are again, and these are the characters that I already really, as a
Yeah.
fan, already really love.
Yeah, I
So
was
I
sad
get
that it
that.
took as long as it did for Bill Murray to show up.
yeah, Bill Murray basically has a glorified cameo in this
Yeah, he's
movie.
basically in 2 scenes, 3 scenes. I don't remember, but he's not in it very much.
Like if you're going to see it for Bill Murray, I would tell you that you're going to be disappointed. Although, like, I feel like um, the stuff with Winston and Ray really kind of makes up for that, because, like, honestly, if you're looking for characters that are actually going to build this universe up, Venkman doesn't actually make sense to be that guy.
Well, also, I mean, you can just look at the media. It's not like Bill Murray's jumping at the chance. Like, man, I just can't wait to go
Well,
ghostbusting again. Like, so
yeah,
I
I
think that a
mean,
lot of that was just like, yeah, you can have me for this amount of days. I don't, maybe it wasn't like that, but like the impression I get is definitely, hey, yeah, this would be fun, and I'm along with it. But
you have
I
me
don't
for
think the
2
interest
days.
was there at all.
Well,
I'm
I
glad
think
Annie Potts shows up. That was fun.
Annie Potts
Us
is
is great.
great. But like I think Bill Murray, the reason why he has appeared in the last 3 Ghostbusters movies at all is probably because he feels guilty over becoming estranged from Harold
Huh.
Ramis. Like,
Well, I don't know about maybe, but also that he's tight with the director. He's really close friends with him. So basically, it's a Gil Keenan, or however you pronounce his name. So they kind of he's like, yeah, whatever, we'll do whatever, I'll do whatever
It
you
is
want.
so funny because I think about, like, hanging out in comic book stores back in the 90s, mid 90s, and there was always a Bill Murray says, "No effing way is he doing another Ghostbusters," and so it took until 2021. Like, if you had said to me, hanging out in Lone Star Comics,
well,
"Oh, you know when that's
he
gonna
was in
happen?"
the 2016 Ghostbusters, just not as Venkman.
Oh, that's right. That is correct.
That was
Yes.
so weird.
Yes.
Well, okay, but here's the thing. One of the reasons why he did say no way is because he wasn't on speaking terms with Harold Ramis for a long
Yeah.
time, and very publicly feels guilty about that. So I do think that plays into it. Like I think he feels bad, but I mean, I of course I'm guessing the thoughts of somebody I don't really know, but like
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I'm
But yeah,
postulating on stuff he has said.
yeah, it's possible. But Gil Keenan says it was super easy, really an inconvenience to get Bill Murray to jump on this one because they're like buddies. So he was just like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah,
Okie dokie.
Well, I
so
mean,
Uh,
and he gets to show up, and he cracks
yeah."
wise and wears sunglasses, and
yeah.
like
Throws pencils at Camille Johnny.
Certainly.
yeah, like I mean, I think it doesn't, for as little as that he is in this, it doesn't really feel like he's phoning it in for the parts that he
Yeah, no, he's
is
great.
in.
Agreed.
I think that there is, but both things are true. Like he did not want to spend days and days and days on the set of this movie, but I think he probably enjoyed the days that he was on set for it.
Yeah. All right. So I have a question. I was going to talk about the curious anti-EPA politics of Ghostbusters, but I think we've gone some much more interesting places, so I just don't really feel like going there. But I am interested in this question, Drew, that we touched on briefly before we started, which was people. Maybe this is a you thing, but you said you've referred to Ghostbusters as being "quote unquote" starter horror, and
Yeah,
I said that I'm not sure I know whether that is a thing that I agree exists.
and I would
And
ask you, why do you not think that is a thing?
I can try it and answer, and then you can give me a longer reason why you disagree with me.
All right.
But the reason I don't, so I get the concept of starter horror, which is you're not into horror, but you're into this particular thing, and it might make you interested in seeking out others. But my feeling about it is that you could be into this kind of thing, and you could only watch ghost stories like Ghostbusters and The Lady in White and The Woman in Black, and you could
That
stay
is
in a
not what
very
starter horror is.
okay, all right, because
Starter
you
horror
understand my point, which is that you can stay in a very sort of non-hardcore, rather spooky, not particularly scary. I mean,
yes.
I almost do this myself, really.
And I'm not that, but that's not what I'm talking. Because like you're coming at this from the perspective of trying to get adults into the genre, which is not what starter horror
Right.
is.
Oh,
Starter
interesting.
horror is horror that is family friendly enough that you can show it to kids and foster a interest in the genre. Like the
Hmm.
Universal Monsters movies are
Yeah.
often referred to as starter horror.
Yeah.
Goosebumps would be starter horror. Monster Squad would be starter horror. And I would argue the Ghostbusters films are
Well,
starter horror.
certainly. I mean, and from that, even if your parents wouldn't let you watch the Ghostbusters film, certainly Real Ghostbusters, for
Yeah,
example, would be
exactly.
like, or Something Wicked This Way comes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
Kid
Yeah.
friendly
like,
horror. It would
and
maybe a better name for it. I did not come up with the term starter horror, so I'm not going to, argue against the internet. But essentially what I'm talking about is kid friendly horror movies. And I think, if like judging by my own, interest, when I saw the original movie, that is one of the things that really, like I was already into monsters and everything, but like what Ghostbusters did is made me realize that you could go out and study like folklore, and you could
Mm,
study like ghost stories, and you could study the paranormal. So it like broadened that. So it like kind of cemented what
yeah,
was already an interest. And I think, especially with some of the stuff that's going on in my life now, the idea of a genre franchise that I could watch with a child is really appealing.
mhm.
And
yeah.
like that's what I mean. So I hope that clears up any confusion about the term, Jason. Like, because I definitely am not talking to try and like, because it is absolutely valid to say I don't want to watch, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or I don't want to watch Saw. Like,
Mhm.
but you can still be a genre fan if you're, like, because it's okay to have preferences,
I get
So
it. Okay.
like
All
that's
right. No, that makes sense. That does. It makes sense. Uh,
I
Yeah.
do
all right.
kind of want
Well,
to talk about Walter Peck, though. Like, we don't
Yeah, let's
necessarily
do
have
it.
to go to
Okay.
like
well,
Yeah.
I do want to say, that where you're coming from, though, Jason, there's a lot of different parts to that. For example, our generation, starter horror was probably, comic books, to
that
be
is
fair.
definitely true.
In addition to whatever Universal horror you could catch
Yeah.
on TV. So there wasn't a there what our I think we talked about it too, like whatever Scholastic anthology happened, and then again, more shockingly, with Something Wicked This Way Comes, which I think was one of the big ones for me, or perhaps Daimajin instead of
Mhm.
Godzilla, because it was darker, right? Like that, the idea of a vengeful
Well, and
god and how dark that was led me to go, whoa, there's this extra layer that isn't Gamera, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
well, and
That's a good
this
point.
movie is not super duper violent, but it is creepy. Like, especially like the scene that takes place in like the early 20th century at the beginning before we jump to the present day, which to me was one of my favorite sequences in the movie, where you have these firemen who are from the firehouse that the Ghostbusters later live in. Going into this room, and you have all these frozen corpses, and you have a severed hand still
Yeah. No, that's
rotating
a
on a
cool image. Yeah.
photograph that is like super creepy, but in a very evocative way. And I could see that both frightening, but
Yeah.
also like be the sort of thing that would really penetrate a kid's imagination and make them fascinated.
Yeah, I've been wanting
It's
to
Mhm.
talk about that scene. That's the opening scene is in 1904, and it is just so cool. The effects are amazing, because I want to get into the effects after we finish
yeah.
this
Well,
particular topic. But I just loved that scene. I thought it was really spooky and awesome, and I think that all the all the ice effects of the big bad. Where I mean, that's what they use in the trailer. It's like the is it the day after tomorrow? Is that what the thing is with the world? And you know, all those are like the comet movies. All those movies where it's the world ending. That's what it looks like in the trailer. Is that this is going to be a world ending thing with this ice just freezing over the whole world. And that's terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying.
I wish that
Absolutely.
honestly more of the movie had been spent in the frozen New York, like because
Yeah.
that stuff was so cool looking. You know, it's really only like the last act that we get the frozen empire of the title. But you know, I get that it was also probably really expensive to do all that stuff.
Yeah, that is the one thing that the trailers kind of sell you a different bill of goods.
That's
And the
true.
third act does kind of go. But by the way, I want to go back to the effects. But you know, when you're talking about how scary things are, on the other hand, I will say that nothing in here is probably as disturbing as the kids I went. Like I was old enough, but my nephews and nieces who saw Return to Oz,
Mm.
it's a deeply more disturbing movie
Well, I
to
would say
most kids.
it's oddly leaning more into sci-fi and horror than comedy, but it's also not as like Afterlife, like Gozer literally rips somebody in half. Like there's nothing even like that in this. But you
Mm.
Right.
know, I would also say that the opening sequence is in some ways more disturbing because it's so macabre and imaginative. So, you know, that I don't know. I guess it depends on what you're looking for.
Mhm.
But
Feels like it could be in like a Magnola verse at the
Yes.
beginning.
Yeah,
Like
very
feels
much.
very like it could be in any kind of thing, like, you know, almost screw on head kind of stuff, but also could be in Hellboy.
They
Like
definitely
it has
toned
that
down
flavor.
some of the violence goes away that was in the trailer. Like maybe they decided to keep some characters that they had thought about killing because it sure looks like the two Ghostbusters that just work in the lab both would get killed in the trailer, and they both make it through. Like the girl whose eyeballs get frozen in the trailer, that doesn't happen in the movie, and she's
well,
Well,
fine.
there's
that's
And I
fun.
supposedly also a longer version of this movie
Yeah.
mm,
that is yet to, I'm sure will drop eventually.
It's not a
mm,
whole bunch of. He said that there wasn't a lot of scenes, but there's a few scenes that'll be added in. But yeah, but there's definitely stuff in the trailer that's not in the movie. But I think yeah, Lucky is who that was. And
hmm
I'm glad that
Celeste
she
O'Connor. Yes, yes, yes.
survives.
That's right.
A
Yeah.
lot. I feel like they kind of didn't kill
Agreed.
anybody in the modern day that I recall that we see. I mean, obviously people are going to get killed.
They kill the guy, they kill a guy in a bodega because his thing says fire master on it, but
Oh, right,
Oh,
that guy.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's the only guy. Honestly, I feel like they should have done more to build up. Like the villain, is cool looking as he is kind of weak when you think about what he actually does on screen. Like he's not as interesting. He doesn't do anything as his powers are really terrifying and his look is really terrifying,
I
but
don't even
he
know that the world freezing is his power so much as it accompanies. It's almost like a prophet of his because he hasn't been released yet when all that stuff starts going down. So it's
Mm.
kind of like it accompanies him, but it's not necessarily of him, you
well,
know?
they
I
do
hadn't.
say that he has the power to cause you to freeze to death with fear.
Right.
So,
And that's
like,
but all the rest of it where like the icicle, you know, the icicle spears are coming up out of the earth and all that. I don't know I don't know where that's coming from. If it's coming from him or if it's something bigger than him and
It's
he
a
just
really good point
comes
that he
with
is
it.
in the process of arriving when all that is happening. But I'm just gonna give it to him that that's his power that advances around him like a wave somehow. I don't know. It's
I
Definitely more
just
of
like,
the
I think,
icicle
I
thing
think
fear.
compared to you look at some of the other big bads from the other movie, and I feel like he is scarier like looking than a lot of the other villains in the
Hmm.
Ghostbusters universe, but he doesn't actually do like as much as people like to knock on Ghostbusters 2, I think Vigo's a better villain than this guy.
Hmm.
And
I'm actually
I'm gonna go back to the fact that also this creature felt like when he appears and he is totally out in the world, he does feel like something that would have been in, again, the real
Oh
Ghostbusters
yeah.
cartoon, because
I
they
am
had some scary ass monsters in there.
I am so happy that apparently he was a puppet though. Like
Hmm.
that makes me
Cool.
happy. Like
well,
I
yeah, that's that. We should switch. Yeah, we should switch into the effects. We had talk more.
yes.
Yes, please.
Go ahead and talk about that puppet because I'm interested. I don't know about him.
I learned, well, I was looking into whether or not Slimer was a puppet because he looked like a puppet to me, but nowadays you never can be sure. And apparently, yes, he was. And
Based on
as
the original mold from the first movie.
yeah. And, I was so happy because I feel like, Slimer is a character that we've seen in all but one of these movies. And I feel like this is the best he's looked since the original Ghostbusters. Like, I think he looked great. And one of the best creature effects I think I've seen in a long time. And, Garucko is also impressive, but I would have bet money that he was CGI. And I when I was looking into the Slimer stuff, I learned that it was a combination of a puppet and a guy in a suit. And there's a few times where he's CGI, but he's mostly
Right.
practical. And I think that that's really the fact that they went back to some of those old school techniques in this is
Mhm.
one of the reasons why it looks so good.
That's true for a lot of the ice effects too, which I thought was awesome. Is that they actually created these these kind of mold things, and they filled them with this shattering, fake ice, like this silicone fake ice. So in that early scene, in 1904, when stuff is just shattering, that's real. Like they have these like pop effects that just shatter these molds full of
These
fake ice.
silicon people.
Yeah, these
Yes.
people. I thought that was there were so many. That's my. I'm gonna
It's a
preview.
neat effect. From what you were
Yeah.
showing me, Julia, they've got strings running through these silicon dummies.
Yeah,
And
I'm
so
gonna
then
I'm
as
gonna
you yank the strings, the thing collapses.
I'm gonna
And
preview that my endorsement is the videos about these effects.
Well, I mean, that's
that's
some of the
really, really
best
cool.
ways. Like I worked with a fair amount of CG, and definitely all CG productions or more animation, but it's harder than you think to make things fall properly, even if you have really good simulation for all of that. Like we can do really good simulation of water, like that's no doubt, but still some blood, some falling, like, so the more you can do, and that's still the best. Like I'm not anti CG. I'd be stupid to say that because so much is there. But the craft of realizing when you need to use CG and when you need to or can use practical effects. Sometimes you don't have the budget to do that. There's all kinds of choices, right? But anytime you can blend those together, because yeah, I mean, there's parts of Garaka that are, CG, of course, because that's what you need to do. But that blend is what really sells it. And all
Well,
those parts
that's
that you're talking about are just great. Like
Yeah.
that adds, like, it falls correctly. It affects the world around it in the way that you would expect. Now, the reason you don't do that a lot of times is like, oh, well, if it messes up, we have to reset up that whole thing, and now we're down a day plus whatever
Yeah.
it takes to remake these things, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's
No, well
also
said.
like when people talk about how well the effects from Jurassic Park like hold up, it's because, people are under the mistaken impression that that movie is crammed to the gills with CG, and it's the reality is that it's a mixture of a lot of different
Mhm.
techniques, and that's what's going on here. And we talk we're talking earlier about what makes you a genre fan. Like I'm a monster kid through and through. Like that's one of the things that I love seeing creatures, and I love seeing the that's what made me dig into like Fangoria magazine and Starlog and stuff like that, because I wanted to know how these creatures were made. And like the idea that there is like some warehouse in Hollywood where guys are making monsters is kind of, it still just tickles my inner 10-year-old so strongly. And of the stuff that this movie that I did not like about it, like, it got almost overwhelmed by, looking at all these different monsters and gadgets and, that kind of stuff, just like anytime something like that would come up on screen, I would be grinning ear to ear.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Walter Peck, and then we should be getting our final thoughts on any honorable mentions that we want to mention. So, William Atherton, the always amazing scumbag William Atherton, who was so great as the just complete schmuck in Die Hard, and the complete schmuck in Ghostbusters, has returned. Now, in Ghostbusters, he was I've always thought, I've never quite understood whether it was Ivan Reitman being this sort of 1980s libertarian, where he's like, we don't need the government and the EPA getting in the way of small business, or whether it just was randomly useful to have him be an EPA guy. In this
Well,
film, he returns. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I think you can look at his shift from being an EPA guy to being the mayor of New York City as to what he ultimately symbolizes, which isn't necessarily that the EPA itself is bad, is that there is something inherently untrustworthy about bureaucracy, which
Yeah.
is a very 80s idea, but it's also something that kind of holds up to a certain degree if you look at it from a certain way.
Yeah, I
Well,
also think
yeah,
originally he's using that as a tool because he hates them or what they stand for. It's
right,
less like, hey, I want to enforce all these really important EPA things, which you should do, right? But also I don't like you, and so I'm going to use. It feels like any kind of like his job isn't this, like the EPA part isn't the most important part. His
right,
job is to be the guy who's like, we don't dance in this town,
right.
or
He's
we
kind of a
don't like
queen bee. He's a jerk.
it's not
He,
it's not
yeah,
the EPA thing is a bludgeon against the Ghostbusters and not meant to be. See what the government will do. These laws are too,
yes,
forceful. That isn't exactly the goal there. It's that he will use whatever it is. That happens to be it. And so and as he moves up to mayor, he's really willing, like, because I mean anybody who knew anything, the original mayor knows that when the ghosts escaped, that was really, really bad, right? Like and it's happened, this crap keeps happening. Well, let's not listen to them about the things in the sewer. Let's not listen to them about what's going on in the museum, all that stuff. Anytime people don't believe the Ghostbusters, terrible shit happens, right?
yeah,
But he's a politician. He's still going to make his way and be the authority figure. Like that hasn't changed for him. So,
yeah,
Well,
that's more what it's about.
and there's, like, you know, everybody, and I'm not saying it's baseless, but like the interpretation of the original Ghostbusters as this, like conservative, narrative. Like, yes, again, I get why people interpret it that way, but you could just as easily say that it's saying, have a healthy mistrust of authority, which is
mhm,
something that is in a lot of movies of that time period, because we weren't that far away from Watergate.
right.
Yeah.
And
Or
No, well said. Yeah,
or even like we talked about before, like this change where like the truckers, the blue, the blue collar workers of the world are like, hey, cops are coming around, watch out. Like that
yeah,
70s into the 80s era are like, why another cop would have to go, this system isn't working, like why do we get the Cobras of the world or whatever.
yes,
But
Yeah,
before
which
that,
Tom Cruise,
Smokey is not the good guy, and Smokey and the Bandit there, everyone.
which Tom Cruise
So
movie is that, where is it Mission Impossible? No, which Tom Cruise's movie is it where he walks over to the crowd and the guy gives him his baseball cap, not having the
oh,
first.
that's Reacher,
Oh
Reacher
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was just so funny. Like this guy has no idea why the
Because
cops are.
there's a universal fear of cops in some movies. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
here's another thing. Like when you're talking about like the way narratives can be interpreted, like within the last few years, I think I talked about this somewhat when we were doing Afterlife, or maybe it was, Answer the Call. I don't know, but
Mm.
you talk about the sort of like anti-science thing that's been going on in our country the last few years. You could
Mhm.
just as easily take these movies and interpret it that way, is that you have a politician who is wielding an anti-science rhetoric against a group of scientists. So
Mm.
I mean, you can interpret a movie a lot of different ways. And again, I'm not trying to say that the conservative interpretation of Ghostbusters is necessarily even wrong. I'm saying that, like none of the characters in Ghostbusters, like you never have Winston or Egon or any of these people talking about which way they vote.
Right.
Like the characters themselves are largely apolitical.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So I think, and perhaps smartly, that leaves it open to the interpretation of the viewer.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that sort of like everyman quality these characters also have, is that you can see yourselves in them. But the role that Walter Peck plays here, the fact that they've shifted him from being an EPA guy to like literally city government.
Mhm.
First of all, he slips back into this character without missing a beat. Like he's
Yeah,
great.
that is amazing. Yes. That's right.
40 something years later, he's still perfect, the perfect scumbag. But his antagonism though now it's not being aimed at middle-aged men. It's being aimed at a, first of all, probably gay teenaged girl. And I
Mhm.
think that is a really smart way to bring this franchise into this century.
Mhm.
Because like your like the main never mind the billing of these movies. Like Paul Rudd gets top billing, but McKenna Grace is the actual star of the
She's the
last two
lead.
Ghostbusters.
She's
Yeah, she is
what
your character that you follow.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the fact that the antagonism is being aimed at, I don't think that's an accident. I think that the people behind these movies know that if these movies are going to continue, like Tony was saying, that you can't have the original people forever as much as we love them. You're going to have to sort of pass the torch, and by having her be the thing that they are aimed, that the wrath is aimed at, I think that's their way of saying, this is your hero now.
Mhm.
This is the human villain of the Ghostbusters universe. And
Yeah.
we're looping this back in. And I just think that was really smart.
That is really cool. I wish we had, if I can shift for just a moment, I wish that the 2016 Ghostbusters were not so stranded in the multiversal universe of Ghostbusters, because I found that to be kind of enjoyable, and and it's been so divorced from this franchise, and I feel sad about that. I kind of wish
I
that,
think that if they start taking ideas from the comic books, which wouldn't surprise me, because one of the comic book things was Ghostbusters International, which this movie looks like it's building towards. But they also did eventually like Ghostbusters multiversal team ups, where
Mm,
you had different universes, Ghostbusters teaming up with it. I would be shocked if they continue making these, if they didn't figure out a way to loop some of those characters back in.
a great
So,
idea. Yeah.
something I want to talk about before we go
Yeah.
to final
Final thoughts.
thoughts.
Yeah.
One of the best scenes in this entire movie is a scene, and I want to talk about this because it's two of the original characters.
Mm.
you have Ray and Winston talking to each other in this after Phoebe has been arrested,
Mhm.
and Winston's kind of chastising Ray, and he says, this is supposed to be our golden years. I'm trying to make things easy for us. And then Ray is like, well, this is how I want to spend my
Yeah.
golden years. Basically, I want to spend my golden years being a Ghostbuster. And, I remember when we were leaving the theater, me saying to Jamie, I don't actually think that Dan Aykroyd is acting, right? Like, first of all, that is probably my favorite scene in the entire movie, is the two
Mhm.
of them. Like, I thought that the
Yeah.
acting there was so great and so sincere. And I thought it was a great thing about talking about aging and everything, but I think Dan Aykroyd absolutely means that he wants to spend his golden years in this universe.
Yeah.
And I found that I don't know, like, maybe I'm getting soft in my own middle age, but I was emotionally affected by that, and I wanted to know if
I
anybody else
found
felt that
lots
way.
of this movie to be emotionally affecting. I mean, I did. I thought it was an extremely sentimental film, and yeah, I agree about that.
Yeah,
That
and
was a
I
nice
I
one.
like that scene also because again, you have Ernie Hudson with some really great business and really reminding, like, look, not everything we were doing was in the was the great or smart. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
destruction involved, and like we can do this better. Like you kind of can't. You got to side with the mayor a little bit about, hey, let's not chuck photon beams through buildings.
Yeah.
You can kill people that way, and you have to clean that up. But also, with a lot of that discussion, like, hey, I'm trying to build something here. Like, it's not the same time period, and how that reflects, just like you're saying, like that's where we are as well. There's some really great business there. I really enjoyed that as well.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, it's reminiscent of the whole Marvel Civil War thing where it's like, you guys, yeah, maybe you're useful, but you gotta you gotta cool it with
Maybe
killing of civilians.
Yes.
maybe don't blow up so many city
Exactly.
monuments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
um
No. No kidding. Yeah.
the way that Ray and Winston are used throughout this movie, like, is, like, that's the thing. I know there are people that wanted it to be just wall to wall the old Ghostbusters, but
Mm.
like, this stuff actually, like, you couldn't make something that was like Ghostbusters 1 or 2 with these guys at their
Of
age
course
now.
not.
Like,
Absolutely
this,
not.
No.
I think, by allowing their characters to age and, like, sort of experience some sort of, like, the thing is that's different about these two recent Ghostbusters, like, because, like, if you were to talk about, like, which movie I feel like gets the sort of SNL comediness of the original movie, it actually is. I might get flamed on the internet from certain circles for this, but it's probably the 2016 remake. Is probably the one
Mm.
that closestly comes to being like, okay, raunchy comedy about four weirdos chasing ghosts around New York. um like, what has happened and what has to happen if you want a because, like, the original Ghostbusters is a classic, but, like, if you want a movie to be a series, you have to have characters that are more, I guess, kind of dimensional in a way. And, again, like, by allowing their characters to age instead of just kind of having them be the same characters but with more wrinkles, I think that adds a lot to these last
Mm.
two. Like, it gives it an emotionality that I really respond to.
Cool.
By the way, as we were watching the pre-show at the Draft House, and it showed,
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
tons of stuff,
Tell us about that because we haven't
like
talked about it in this episode.
they do such a good job. Like, hey, this, if anybody forgets this is skewed towards young people, like, again, the action figure commercials from all over the world are one thing, but there's no way that anybody involved in creating the Ghostbusters theme could have possibly imagined that it would be so catchy. I mean, it's catchy, yeah, but like so popular and beloved across the world.
Hmm.
And just sung, like, you see these early like weird, like, here's Ray Parker Jr. in like a show in Germany, or like
Yes.
miming, and all of it's lip synced, right? But it's all got weird costumes, or like the one there's an ad lib one they show where it's like this really attractive dancer girl and ghost who's like, I ain't afraid of that ghost. It's like, oh, rock stars, like
Well,
Yes.
but like you
I'm so
can't.
glad the song became part of the canon of the movie because they have that
Yeah,
little.
exactly. But
Yeah.
all like I'm just like, wow, the examples of a song that's that catchy and universally known, where you can just go da 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 dun 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 dun, and it like worldwide somebody's like Ghostbusters, like
Yes.
that phenomena is just, it's transcending. Like, who knows what in another country if they're like, oh yeah, Bill Murray was great or whatever, or Dan
Right.
Aykroyd. But like the fact that you can just hum a bit of it and somebody's gonna react, that's an amazing phenomena. And it struck me as I saw multiple clips, like, because I mean that's the through line to every single bit of marketing.
Really
It
good
was on
point.
TV. It's like people parroting it. There was like a different Strokes episode that had Ghostbusters stuff in it. There, all these different things. The Hulk Hogan cartoon, the rest WWF cartoon had all of them dressed as Ghostbusters. But like, there's versions, like slightly tweaked versions, because they couldn't get the license every time. But I just think that I was fascinated, like, seeing how far that song has gone and what a catchy tune. Like, as a musician, you hope that something has that lasting quality to it. Yeah, I mean
I'm
that's
glad you. By the way,
amazing.
I just want, so that song is amazing, and it is, and there's not even a word for how amazing it is, because you're right. It maybe surpasses Thriller in terms of like probably the most recognizable fun spooky song on the planet,
Sure.
and that's, yeah. But the music in this film uses so many needle drops
Mhm.
and new compositions based on the original score, that it was so fun to listen to it, going all the way through. I just really enjoyed hearing just all the music cues, bum 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 bum, all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
Just
they know
yeah.
when to do it. It's like pulling it. It's like pulling in the Godzilla theme when you need it, right?
Yes.
Like, all of that stuff. I mean, they're definitely, if you are cynical and want to say, oh, this nostalgia, like, can't we get new stuff? Like, why are we going for remakes? Like, this is definitely not for you. And in
Yeah.
some ways it plays, it's a weird dichotomy though, because there's a lot of nostalgia here, but also, like I said, like, they're also going, hey, look, if you're not along for this new cast, you're probably not going to like where we're going with all this,
Right.
right? Like, it's definitely
Here's
passing the torch. But all that stuff, I think, like, if you're there to see a Ghostbusters with, especially like you're a parent and you want to bring your kids to the new Ghostbusters film, I think that that's great. And I wish, I'll be fair, I wish like we had the same thing with like the GI Joe movies
Mm.
and newer Transformers movies. With Bumblebee does it really well, actually. But like, it galls me that people can't just go like, I as a fan would like to take my child and show them this thing that I really loved when I was younger, and we both can enjoy it. And instead, it's got to
Mm.
be, here's this new thing. Cobra Commander does this and
We've
Baroness
gotten
does
a lot
that, and
better
all,
at
like,
this. Yeah,
I don't understand,
because that
like,
well,
why you have to
yeah.
do that.
you're
Like,
kind of hitting on something, when like there was this weird like sort of antagonism towards both Afterlife and this film from the critical community, and the thing that they keep saying, the argument they keep saying is like, oh, it's not as good as the original, nothing's ever going to be as good as the original. And I'm kind of at the point where, like, yeah, nothing like if you're making movies that are attached to like a franchise to where it starts with a classic movie, then yeah, of course nothing's ever gonna yeah, like to go back to what you just brought up, Godzilla. But like, I think you can safely say none of the Godzilla movies that ever have come out have ever come even close to touching the power of the original movie. But minus one was pretty damn good, and I'm glad that
Right.
we keep making Godzilla movies because I want to see other people do an interpretation of this material. Like the original Ghostbusters is my favorite movie. Like I can't even count how many times I've seen it. I've seen it so many times. Like I consider it to be the best movie ever made. I love that movie. I am okay with other entries not being on that level as long as they're still entertaining. And I'm tired of that argument. I don't even think it's valid.
Right.
You're not actually criticizing. And look, I have I think I'm being fair because I have lobbed criticisms against this movie while
Yes.
during this discussion. But like I think you judge the movie that you are watching, not how it compares to some it's the original movie. Like, do we compare every James Bond movie to Dr. No? Do we
Well, actually, Drew, not
Some
no.
people do, I'm sure.
I mean,
Well,
yes,
yeah.
if you like, yes, and those are the critics you're talking about. But like,
but I just don't think that's a valid argument.
No, but you're
anymore.
right.
I'm with you.
Yeah. As I
I'm
get
with-
older, I find that not only basically you can predict all of the arguments, but they leave less of an they affect me less. I'm like,
But-
oh, I can see exactly what the idiots are going to say, but I don't care.
But it is a sliding scale, though. For like for example, it's similar, and I'm not going to go too far with this, but like I didn't enjoy Pacific Rim 2 as much, and part of that was a little bit because I went, oh, it looks kind of like you want to pass the torch, like you have a new team and they're younger, and it felt it. I don't want to go so harsh to say it felt forced. That's not exactly it, but when I kind of caught like, this feels like you're taking me here and I don't know if I'm there yet, or that's what the movie I wanted. And so it was harder for me to enjoy that. But we're also talking about a film that is the culmination of kaiju movies and mech movies and anime and everything else. So like I didn't want to be too harsh on it, but I didn't enjoy that as much because it kind of had that, like, I kind of wish we had stuck with more of what I liked about the original. And there's many reasons why that movie is what it is, but it also felt like, are they going to turn this into a TV show now with these younger characters, like that kind of thing. So I get why people may feel that way, but I think we've also had a longer time and a more beloved franchise here, like a more beloved series of movies.
But yeah,
and ancillary cartoons and lore and everything else, that now is kind of the time to start maybe moving those pieces around a little bit. But I get it, but also like I do try to judge it on its own, which is why, but sometimes it's hard, especially if you're so close to it, right? Like I get
Yes, that's
criticisms.
True. That is completely true. Yeah.
I just don't quite get the particular antagonism to the idea of a Ghostbusters like film series. Like it's strange to me that like none of these same film critics are like, gosh, I wish they would stop making Star Wars movies.
Well,
I mean, there's a lot of that. Actually, I just saw a post recently. It was like, oh, look what Disney has done.
There are
I loved it before
guys,
Disney.
I mean, there are guys who believe, look, if we got rid of all these franchises, it would open up the skies to a lot of new creativity. And maybe there's some truth to that. But the fact is, that stuff, well, you know what?
I go back to my Godzilla -1 argument. Like, we wouldn't get Godzilla -1 without all the other Godzilla movies.
I think that there is some validity to that view, but to be honest, and this is again a deeper probably discussion than people probably want to have, but if you wanted that, what would change that is let's not have a bunch of MCU and a bunch of franchises, but let's have a bunch of smaller budget films
and go watch them.
and just a lot of people, basically the same thing with A&R and music. Like, let's develop and market, because marketing is let's develop and market and foster a want and a need for people, because obviously, like, if you look at what people say about like Tubi, and they go, I can watch all the stuff on Tubi, it's so random, and look what I found. I mean, we've done that, like, or Amazon, like weird trips. Now Tubi is kind of taken over where Amazon is now. I guess Amazon has Freebie, which is sort of the same, but like a couple years ago, I could do a lot more, and also because people were pirating things. But anyway, like, there's a want for that. Like, I want to find the weird stuff, and I want it for cheap. So I'm not saying we just need to flood the movies. There's only so many movies you can release, or else you get kind of fatigued, or you can't see them all in the theater, right? But if people want more of a thing and less of less big, but these big franchises, like, the way to do that is like keep those because they pay the bills, and then have the studio foster a bunch of mid-budget things. Let's bring back like, why can't we have more rom-coms and stuff? And there's, I mean, you can read and read and read about why that isn't the thing for huge, like, that's not this podcast.
But that is the answer.
But that would be
you're right.
that's what.
But in
nobody's
fairness
funding
to
that.
what you're saying, is this was a good weekend for low budget horror films.
Absolutely.
Because both Immaculate and Late Night with the Devil did quite well this weekend.
Yeah.
So, you know, this movie existing and opening big, like the biggest opening for a Ghostbusters film, did not stop those two movies, which had considerably smaller budgets, by the way, from doing well in the show. So I think there's room for all these things.
Right.
And, and when we get to my recommendations, I am going to be recommending two indie films. So I think you can support both too, and I think, genre fans often do. I don't know about fans of other things, but I do feel like horror fans are good about supporting both, original material, but everybody's got their favorite franchises, be it Nightmare on Elm Street or, Ghostbusters. It's, like, I do see people going out for both.
All right. I want to get our final thoughts and then our endorsements. So this has been a lot of fun to talk about. How did we do this? What was the order? It was
Julia, Tony, then me. I went last.
Drew,
It was not
team leader.
It was not Drew first.
So Julia, what are your final thoughts?
I've had a blast talking about it, and we probably could keep talking about it because I'm sure there's tons that we didn't cover. But I think I'm excited about the younger cast being, here to see us into the future should we continue to do Ghostbusters films. But I'm really glad that that the old timers, as it were so well featured in this film. But yeah, I'm just, like I said, that I already said that I absolutely love the special effects. I thought the big bad was pretty cool. I thought Kumail Nanjiani was pretty funny, but they just, both of those were kind of underused. Like, I would have liked to have seen them come in earlier, and then maybe a little bit less of some of the earlier stuff. But I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I agree that, I'm kind of like, oh man, we could probably talk another hour about the cool stuff and then, criticism. For example, I do think that it kind of hurries towards the end, and that's fine. But, there's a balance to be made on that. I really enjoyed it. Part of it also could be that I could go to a theater where I could get Ecto Punch and, marshmallow milkshakes and stuff like that. So, with a good pre-show.
Called the Ecto Cooler instead of Frozen Empire. I think that would have been a better name. I think that.
Oh yeah, I'm with you there. Whoever brought that up on social media, like, yes. Although it doesn't have the same kind of like gravity, right? But I'm with you. It would fit into the franchise better. I had a blast. I see why people would have a problem, and I respect if you don't like this movie, that's fine. If you're going because you just social media, if you're not going or you're angry because social media told you so, I got nothing for you there. Although, Drew, to your point about people cosplaying, now we're going to get a whole new Red Ghostbusters cosplay wave.
Yes, the
which
cozy
is cool.
Ghostbuster parka.
Exactly. So, although we're not, you know what? We're not getting one thing I am surprised is we don't have a we don't have a Frozen Empire Ghostbusters serial. Like, why don't we have all that?
That's true.
I don't know what's up with that. What happened? What's changed in the world where less specialty serials? But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I would watch it again. I would watch the longer version. I think, like I said, there's a lot we haven't talked about. All the stuff, all the Fire Master stuff is interesting and cool. Yeah, I had no expectations going in and was really pleasantly surprised with what we got. I think the balance to me struck pretty well.
Thank you very much. Drew, that brings us to you to sing us out with your final thoughts on this.
This conversation has made me really want to go rewatch this movie. So, maybe my ranking of it will change because, like all Ghostbusters, I am destined to watch this movie a bunch of times. Like, so, I do think it is a lot of fun. And if you are a fan of cool monster effects and cool science fiction gadgetry and things like that, this movie definitely has it in spades. I think it's worth seeing in the theater. Like I've seen a lot of people say that they're going to hold off on this, and I know with the new Godzilla Kong movie coming in, I have this feeling this movie's probably going to get it curb stomped next weekend by foes more formidable than Gozer. But I think that I hope that this movie has, despite my criticism of it, I hope this movie has stronger legs than that, because I do think it is a worthwhile theater watch. Like it's got spectacle in spades. Like it's the special effects in this are really great, and it did also have a lot of emotional resonance for me. Like all the Phoebe stuff and all the stuff with Ray like really worked for me in this movie. So especially since I feel like as much as I want to be the cool sarcastic guy like Peter Venkman, I think if I am a Ghostbuster personality wise, it's probably is Ray. So there you go. Anyway, yeah, great combo, and yeah, we probably could talk another 2 hours on it.
Wonderful. All right. I have nothing to add because I think you guys handled that extremely well. So let's get our endorsements. I have no idea what any of you guys are going to endorse, and this is going to be fun, therefore. So, Julia, what do you got for us?
Well, I was traveling all week, so I didn't get a chance to take much in, but I did just go down a rabbit hole of watching a bunch of YouTube videos on Adam Savage's Tested YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com and then /@tested. And he's just got a bunch of videos about this movie, and like all he was there when they were making all these effects beforehand, backstage, or like not backstage, but behind the scenes. And so there's a lot of how these practical effects were made, but there's also just tons of really cool sciencey things on this website. So it's a lot of or YouTube channel. It's a lot of fun, and I'm gonna be watching a lot more and learning dorky things about science and science fiction effects and all that. So
wonderful. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Tony, what about you?
I haven't watched as much horror lately. Unfortunately, I've been just watching. Also, I've been playing a ton of the Yakuza game I've told you about. But one thing that's interesting, one of my time waster games, or just games I can chill out to, is a game called Power Wash Simulator, which I may or may not have talked about. And it's exactly what it is. You power wash things. And it sounds like, why would you take on a second job as a video game? But there's I've completed a task element to it, right? Also, when I have Power Wash for real, it's way less messy to do it on your PS4. But they've been releasing all these packs. So, like there's a SpongeBob pack, and there's a Back to the Future one that has some really cool Easter eggs. Well, they just released a Warhammer 40K pack, and you just watch these and they did such a good job of like making it kind of look like the models that you paint, like the way like they look kind of dry brushed and stuff. it's fascinating. They did made it in this big hangar that's like one of the ships, and there's like stained glass. It's Warhammer 40K, so everything's Gothic cathedraly. But and they went harder than any game about power washing things should have gone for Warhammer 40K. Which sounds like, again, when you tell people that, and I'm sure there's some dad out there somewhere who's like, you like that game so much, I got you a real power washer. You should go work this weekend. But
Yes.
I don't know. It's one of those things, like the fact that they went so hard on this Warhammer 40K expansion is just, I don't know, something about that is just so weird and cool and fascinating to me. Of course, I picked it up instantly. The movie that I have to recommend is pretty interesting. It's called Molly and Max in the Future.
Mhm.
So if you can think of it as kind of a futuristic green screen heavy When Harry Met Sally, but modern. These characters interact in the future, and there's some really good satire. In fact, there's some satire where I was like, oh, this is too real at this point. In our lives, but I think you'd really enjoy it. I had a blast with it. It looks really great. You can kind of I'm really looking at the kind of the CG and the how they put it together, and I thought it was really kind of smart. There's mech fighting and there's space stuff, but at the core is just two people, and you've kind of seen these things in other movies, but recontextualizing it is interesting. So I really like that. And again, I'm still watching Shogun and all of that, but that's Molly and Max in the Future is kind of the new movie I saw, and I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to some more horror soon, and I'm looking forward to a few more movies in the theater. Also, I saw Dune 2 in IMAX, and I don't know how many places with a real IMAX like we have with the Bullock Museum are still showing it. I think it's getting replaced by Godzilla versus Kong because there's contractual things that you have to do with movies. But if you can see that movie in IMAX, like if it ever comes back, do that. I saw both parts. This was me going the last weekend, and that's quite the movie to catch writ large like that. I mean, Dune has to be your thing. Like, it's not going to win over everybody, but as far as theatrical experiences go, that was well worth it. I even braved parking down in that area, so I knew that.
Yeah.
And that they've changed that a lot. But yeah, if you can't see Dune 2 in IMAX, and it's something else.
Wonderful. Thank you. Drew, what do you got?
Two horror comedies. First, Tony, actually, I remember talking about this movie a lot back a year or so back, but Satanic Hispanics, which is an anthology, which is an anthology film with all Latinx filmmakers, and it is awesome. First of all, I'm always there for a good horror anthology, but also they cast a really wide net with tones and genre and stuff like that, but also like this movie, really cool looking creature effects in that movie. Like in particular, they have Saint Death at the end of the movie, which takes on two entirely different forms and looks awesome in both of them. But also from the Great White North of Canada, Here for Blood, which is I have described it to people as, so take a home invasion horror movie like When a Stranger Calls or The Strangers or any one of those, but you replace the babysitter character, like say you replace Carol Kane with a jacked professional wressler and watch comedy ensue. In this film, there is a satanic cult trying to get into this house, and what has happened is this wrestler's girlfriend has to study. She's in college and she has to study for a test, so she was supposed to babysit this kid, but she couldn't do it. So she ropes her boyfriend, who again is a absolutely yoked professional wrestler, into doing it. And the satanic cult that's trying to sacrifice this little girl are so frustrated because every time one of them manages to break in, this absolutely humongous guy just beats the crap out of them. And it is so funny. And I love seeing things that play with genre conventions, and like this twisted, like I never would have thought to twist a home invasion movie like this, but like
What's it called again?
Here for Blood.
Here
You
for
can
Blood.
watch that on Screambox. Satanic Hispanics is on Shudder. Both are well worth your time. And they are the low budget indie horror that we were talking, that like if you want to see these movies that were not made for hundreds of $millions thrive, here are two that you can go out and support that are also completely original properties that are not attached to any kind of franchise. So I've done my due diligence this week. I've supported both. I supported these movies and gave them money, and then I went and I saw Ghostbusters. I am multifaceted. Thank you.
I wish we could cover Satanic Hispanics, because I also was there for the Q&A, and not to be like, oh, I saw the Q&A, but like there were some really good stories that were told that
I'm not
like,
against it.
yeah.
We may find a way to get around to doing it.
Yeah,
that
there's a
that
lot
could
of
be
really
cool.
good filmmakers involved in making that anthology. It is pretty gory, but yeah, the stories
I really wanted
were
to interview the
fascinating.
people involved in that, and I can't remember what came up, but so that it
Yeah,
didn't
I
line
wish
up.
it as well. But there's good
Yeah.
people all the way across the board on that, and it is really good. I'm glad you saw it, Drew, because
I loved it.
it's
I
so
thought it was great.
it's tons of fun.
Excellent. So gosh, what do I have? The only thing that I was not familiar with at all, and this is, you guys have been sublime. I'm going to be ridiculous, but I really recommend that you look up SCTV with Rick Moranis doing the police, because I had never seen this before. Julie and I, and you just have to picture that we just suddenly sat up and were staring at this because Rick Moranis was playing a lounge singer on SCTV doing the police, do 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 do, and it is the funniest thing I've ever seen. It is, it's just,
That one's solid for sure. Yeah.
and he
Also
has a,
Ghostbusters adjacent. Well done.
yes, and Rick Moranis has the character is called Tom Monroe. So there is a video on YouTube that's just the complete Tom Monroe. It's every Tom Monroe sketch that he did on SCTV, where he's this Steve and Edie kind of lounge singer covering pop songs like Turning Japanese and do 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 and stuff like that. And it is exactly as wonderful as you can imagine. And Rick Moranis, actually a pretty good singer, so that's kind of cool. So singing this extremely dorky cover of everything he touches. So I love it. So that's what I will leave you with. This has been a lot of fun to discuss. I don't remember what we're coming back with next, but we will talk about it off screen, and we will let you guys know soon. Thank you. Be excellent to one another. Come to the Facebook page and tell us what you think, or if we're completely wrong, or if we're completely right, and or anywhere in between. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.
Good night.
Night.